She said, people I've already talked to. She said, now they may not all keep their word, but some of them are, and they're going to be there. She said, I love them so much, I just talk to them all the time. Forget about what I thought. What do you think the master thought at that point? I think he looked down from heaven and said, I like what you're doing. That's why I died. So what about today? Are we like that first century Christian? Are we like they were? As the church, are we like what we were like when we were the fastest growing? We're not even growing now, by the way. Oh, it's 0.5 up to about 1%, which is no growth, really. You lose and gain, and so basically the church is just not growing that much. And I realize some of that has to do with the way people listen and the indifference and the materialism and hedonism and so on that's in the world. But are we at all like that in being assertive and aggressive and bold and daring? What would God have us to do? The mission hasn't changed, has it? And there's an old song, I don't think it's in this hymn book, that says, Christ has no hands but our hands, no lips but our lips. He doesn't have plan B. There's a fictional story that goes with that, where the story is that in heaven there's an angel looking down on earth and saying to the Master Jesus, Jesus, so you died for everybody, is that right? Yes. Well, do they all know it? No. Well, how are they supposed to find out? Well, my people are going to tell them. Well, Jesus, what if they don't tell them? He said, I don't have any other plans. It's up to us to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And by the way, and I'm sure John Gary and others have preached this to you in the past, if you worship here, and our son and his wife worship at Tusculum, and I know they've heard this, so from wherever you come, probably somebody's told you that Great Commission in Mark 16:15, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, can be literally translated this way: as you go into all the world. So it can be in a coffee shop. It can be on the internet. It can be in the backyard, on the patio. It could be in a Bible class. It could be while you're making your way to Knoxville to a football game. It can be in any setting, in any situation. But the Christian has a message that Jesus wants all people to know, because Jesus died for them. See, that's why we have to do this. That's why we are to be evangelistic. That's why we must not lose sight of what our mission is as disciples of Christ. We have a message that people need to hear. And if there is anything that would drive us, that would energize us, it ought to be compassion. Put it in this situation. Let's say you've had a physical, and your doctor comes into the room where you've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And he sits down on that stool and he looks at you to give you the report. What do you want him to tell you? Oh, I want him to make me feel good and tell me I'm in good health. Okay, let's tell him to do that. But he's looking at the results of a couple of tests that says you've got a serious problem. And if it's not dealt with, it's going to kill you. Now, do you want him to make you just feel good? Or do you want him to tell you the truth? And we can say, how about those players? I started to say, how about those Vols? But you might have some Commodore fans or, I don't know, Tech fans or whoever, but you just pick out your favorite team. How about those Braves? How about those Titans? Whatever it is. Or you might say, man, what about this car I've got? Man, that's the best car I have ever driven in my life. You can talk about all that you want to, and you say, well, this weather, man, I'm telling you, I don't know how to... Or you can talk about sports, you can talk about clothes, you can talk about family, you can talk about old times, you can talk about all those things, and we can go to shop together, go to ball games together, go to school together, live next door to each other, and we can laugh and cut up and have a good time, and you're sitting there knowing that you're talking to somebody who has a serious problem, and he's going to die eternally if somebody doesn't tell him. Now, do you want to make him feel good, or do you want to help him learn the truth? You want to have another laugh and act like everything's okay? Or do you want to care enough to tell him the truth? I make people mad sometimes when I preach. I don't intend to. But what makes them mad is me telling them the truth. Now, Rooster's not mad. He just got to go to work. I just want them to know the truth. And like I said to you in the very beginning, I'm going to answer to God for what I say. And if I know what a man needs to know to save himself from his sins by believing in Jesus, repenting from his sins and confessing his faith in Jesus and being baptized, just like Peter told that first crowd to be baptized in the name of Jesus to have their sins washed away. And if I know that and I don't tell him, how could I say I love him? And how could I say that I love Jesus, who left the commission in our hands? I'm going to close by reciting to you something that is in that hymn book. Don't turn and read it, just listen. These are words that ought to haunt us. When in that better land, before the bar we stand, how deeply grieved our souls would be if any lost one there should cry in deep despair, "You never mentioned him to me. You never mentioned him to me. You met me day by day, and you knew I was astray, and yet you never even mentioned him to me." Follow Jesus and be fishers of men. Thank you for your wonderful attention.